In 1994, South Africa emerged from the shadows of apartheid with the promise of democracy and equality. Yet 30 years later, the dream remains elusive for many Black South Africans. In this video, we delve into the harsh realities facing the Black communities in post-apartheid South Africa through the voices of three prominent individuals: a prominent political party leader, a fearless woman activist, and a former Black Business Forum leader, and now a fighter, will unravel the complexities of inequality, racism, and political disenfranchisement, as we all ask the question, why do Black people continue to be the ones suffering in their own land? Welcome to our special segment, where we confront a pressing issue: the enduring struggles faced by the Black people in post-apartheid South Africa. Despite gaining democracy in 1994, inequality, racism, and poverty continue to plague the Black community. Watch the three clips as three individuals share their perspectives on this complex and troubling reality. Watch until the end, where I present a former president and a veteran struggle stalwart advising on what to do in case we are let down by the so-called liberators.
We want to say to all our brothers and sisters all over the world, we are with you. But the treatment of Black people with dignity must start here in Africa, by us Africans treating each other with respect. We have a responsibility to teach the whole world that Africans and Blacks in general are not subhuman. They are full human beings. And therefore, you cannot be behind Black Lives Matter and still see an opportunity to destroy another Black person. When you support the killing of your own fellow Black brothers and sisters here in South Africa, and have some useless hashtag on social media, put South Africa first, that is a narrow nationalism, because the problem of Black people is not a problem of South Africa. A Black man is hated everywhere, be it in China, be it in France, be it everywhere. You cannot say South Africa first. We must say Black first and defend the Black lives everywhere, including here in South Africa. We will never be respected if we suffer from self-hate. Because the reality of the situation is that you don't respect yourself. Because if you loved this face, this Black face, when you are about to burn a Zimbabwean and seeing the tears of a Black African fellow crying for his or her life, you will see yourself and stop it immediately. It is not a problem of Zimbabwe. It is not a problem of Nigeria. It is a problem of self-hate. We must begin to love ourselves. Then we'll never have a problem anyway. So, charity begins at home. The hatred of a Black skin must stop here in South Africa and all over Africa. There is no Botswana, there is no Swaziland, there is no Lesotho. We are one family. They went to meet and took a decision to divide us and imposed borders on us because they are threatened by African unity. So we must not buy into the story of existence of Botswana, of Lesotho, because all these borders are an imagination. South Africa belongs to the continent of Africa. We are nothing without this continent. We must liberate the continent economically so that all of us can exist without fighting for crumbs.
I don't have anything against white people, but I have a problem because black people are suffering in this country. Why us? Are we a cursed nation? Did Jesus Christ die for us to suffer like this? What have we done to deserve such treatment in our own country?
Things that need to change in this country. A lot of things. I used to think South Africa has the best constitution in the world. I do.
That's what we've been told.
They told us we have the best constitution. And I read the constitution. I thought, wow, incredible constitution. We do. We are all free. We have freedom of choice. We have freedom of movement. We have freedom of religion. We have a right to housing, etc., etc., etc. And it looks good on paper. Then when you read certain things and you're like, no.
Like what?
Property rights. Explain to me, let me ask you a question. If I have to ask you about, let's say, the EFF, right? Yeah. Or I ask you about now the MK party. And it's Azapo, if I'm not mistaken.
It's Azapo, yeah.
Yeah. What are they fighting for?
Land.
They're fighting for land.
Yeah. So
you've got these political parties that are fighting for land, which is very important. Land is very important, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, our law allows anyone across the globe to come into South Africa and buy property. Now, is property not land?
Yeah, it is.
So how is that? How does that work? So they've created a constitution that was beneficial to perpetuate or continue, I'm going to say, financial segregation in South Africa, but they did it through the constitution.
Say that again, Samantha.
They have created a constitution that allows them to continuously perpetuate financial segregation in South Africa, but through the constitution. So Cape Town is a very... how many people can buy houses in Cape Town?
Very few.
Who buys houses in Cape Town?
It's mostly international community.
Exactly.
or the successful people of this country.
Right. Because the constitution allows anyone to come into South Africa and buy property. And property is land. So now you've got the EFF, you've got Mkhonto Wesizwe, you've got Azapo fighting for land, but at the same time you've got a constitution that allows anyone to come in and buy the very land that you're speaking about.
And buy it next to nothing with their euros, dollars and pounds.
Exactly. You've got people that have 1,000 hectares of land. What are you doing with 1,000 hectares of land? But they come in and they buy, and they buy, and they buy. And then on the one side we're saying land expropriation, and on the other side they come in and they buy the land, and then they can present you with the very same title deeds that they are going after a lot of the farmers that cannot present the title deeds, but these people will be able to present you with a title deed, and then what?
So you think the DA, and I would have loved for us to extend on that issue of land. It's just for the sake of time and some other topics that I would like to cover. Maybe let's move on. Let's still talk about the 2024 elections and the outcome in the Western Cape. Do you think the DA will perform at its worst than all the other elections ever? This election in the Western Cape?
I think they should, based on what has happened. And if they don't, then you 100% know that those elections are rigged.
And if they do, who do you think their votes are going to go to? Let me not say their votes. Let me say, who do you think
it will come from?
Yeah.
So there's something that I read. I don't know if I think you saw, where during COVID, there was a group of Europeans that came into South Africa, right? Or before COVID or something. And because you can buy land in South Africa, you own property. And depending on the amount of money you bring into the country, you can get citizenship, right? So there was a case where they were speaking about dual citizenship, who can vote, etc., 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 right? And I remember I was like, maybe I'm being a bit paranoid, but could it be that because remember, the DA have intentionally promoted Cape Town as now recently a digital nomad city, right? They've intentionally promoted it across the globe for people to come into Cape Town, but they promote it to a specific group of people. Now, if you have enough money and you can get your citizenship, then you have someone like Phil Craig saying, I've now started a referendum party and I want Cape Town. On which basis? He's got citizenship because he's got money.
So he can vote.
Because how did he register a party? So my point is that we could be shocked and we'll have people voting there. And we don't know where the votes came from. But if you look at the numbers will then need to align. If you look at the demographics, they will say, this is the amount of people that have registered, this is the amount of people that are South African, etc., etc., etc. So the majority of the voters, if it comes from the colored people, I don't know. If it comes from black people, I don't know. It clearly means that if that is the case, then I'm telling you now that our country suffers from Stockholm syndrome. Because how are you going to vote for the very same people that have shown you over a specific period of time that their interest is not for you? For them, they are vested in a specific group of people, which is their own people. Apparently the DA did not use up their full budget for housing. But then you look at Gugulethu, and you look at Mitchell's Plain, and you look at Kailicha, and you look at what happened with the rains, you've got a budget that is for housing, and you are saying that those shacks will continue to remain there. Why? When you haven't used up the full budget. So it's very intentional. A lot of the things that happen in South Africa is very structured, and it's very intentional. I don't know if you... Africa has now... No, so I went and I read the bill. I read the bill again. So it starts off by saying that they are submitting this bill to Congress so that the US can review the bilateral agreement, not with South Africa. They say the ANC government. ANC, right? So it's an organization. Because the ANC government have not complied to, or have not... whatever the agreement was, we don't know what the agreement was, since 1994, since the beginning of the agreement, the ANC government have continuously gone against what they have decided on or agreed upon, right? One of it being that they have continuously called out Israel as an apartheid state. They've now taken Israel up to the ICJ. They have been very anti-Semitic towards Jewish people, right? And because of that, they need to review this. But then you continue to read it and then it says, since 1994, the ANC government have not complied or to what their obligation to this bilateral agreement was, right? And they have now aligned themselves to countries that the US are not allies to, specifically Russia and China, right? And South Africa have now become a security threat to the US because of their association. Then they go on to say that they need to review the agreements, right? And that they have classified documentation to support that the ANC government have been against the bilateral agreement. Now, South Africa as a country have never been able to produce the minutes for the CODESA negotiations. That classified documents that they're able to provide, which is a bilateral agreement that is not available on the internet, that you and I cannot have access to say that the ANC government and the US have agreed on the following terms based on us and what is beneficial to us, but it's classified. And because of that, we are now a threat to the US government. Make it make sense.
I need funds to the DA.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying if any black or colored South Africans still continue to vote for the DA, then you must be suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Because it has been so clear. It's something as basic as when there's any form of racial injustice, right? You look at the incident that happened in Bloem, and you look at what happened to those 3 black boys where they tried to drown them.
And also what happened in Phoenix.
Exactly. Did the DA say anything? You are an inclusive party that's looking to represent South Africa as a nation. But at no point have I ever seen them go there and say, why are you guys doing this? So when we say 30 years, they always assume that, oh, you're harping on 30 years because apartheid was 30 years ago. No. We see racism, discrimination, and inequality in South Africa on a daily, and you don't call them out for it. And as a so-called inclusive, democratic alliance party, should it not be your responsibility to do so? To hold the very same people, your people, accountable for the racism, discrimination, and inequality that you say does not exist, but we see it.
And your own black leaders that you've groomed over the years left you.
Yes.
For what reasons? Because they leave and they keep quiet. I've never heard Osislindo Mazibuko speak against the DA. I don't know. It's interesting what you've just said now. Like, if you're black and you're still voting for the DA, I don't know. But then who should they vote for?
At the moment, South Africa needs change, whether we like it or not. And whether it means that this change is going to come at the expense of South Africa having to collapse as a country first and then get back up, we need that change. If we don't, we will continuously have countries like the US that can pass bills and threaten our national security as long as they are protected. And when you look at, I always tell people, vote for a political party that looks like you, that looks like your problems and looks like your solutions. Because I do not see how the very same people that have oppressed you, who say they've taken you out of oppression, is going to help you when they've shown that they haven't. So for me personally, if you look at the political parties that I feel we should lean more towards, it will be the EFF, MK, UDM. I used to think, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe. But I think you look at the ANC, unfortunately, they've been compromised. We really don't. You look at the ANC and you're like, I'm never dismissive of what it is that they've achieved. Never. I'm not dismissive. I always speak about the fact that you don't know what the ANC have taken over, right? And they've done a lot. However, they have been dismissive of the very same people that trusted them enough to put them in power, right? So that's that. But in a country like South Africa, where 80% of the, let's say 90%, if you include the colored vote, right? 90% of the population is black. Who will represent us best in a so-called democracy? What is a democracy? How do you define a democracy?
How you define a democracy is a country that caters for everyone.
Yes.
Diversity, inclusivity in diversity.
And majority rules. That's a democracy. So if majority rules, does it not make sense that your top 5 political parties should be black? How is the DA the second biggest party in South Africa? Make it make sense. The DA should not even be in the top 5 political parties in South Africa, but they are there. That's
why I felt very disrespected. Shout out to my brother, Mr. David Mashabela. He interviewed Helen Zille. And I heard Helen Zille talk about, she's dictating on, anyway, that's another conversation.
I saw that.
That interview really irritated me. And just the arrogance of whiteness sometimes.
It's very, and I think they don't understand, they
it's like,
you
just come and steal at my house and then afterwards you come and tell me like,
you must move the bed now. Like, you came into my house. Now you're asking me I must go live in the garage and while I am at it I must make tea for you and I must respect you. No. I know what you're talking about. I watched, I was listening to Helen Zille and I looked at this and I think there's a lot of things that they did not see coming. A lot of things that happened simultaneously in South Africa. And a lot of it is you have Gen Zs that have come up. There's millennials. There's the education in South Africa. Like a lot more black South Africans are educated. Like we are educated. So they can't whitewash a lot of things anymore. They still try through propaganda and through mainstream media. Like the info that came out recently where the survey that was done that apparently says that the DA has increased in certain provinces was done because they did it with DA members, right? So Action SA took them up for that. But you look at that and I don't think, and I always say like, these people didn't see us coming. They thought that when you speak to a Samantha, you speak to a Spoo, you're still speaking to my ancestors. No, you're not speaking to the same generation. So Helen Zille saying that, and she said it so confidently, shame. I was like, shame, auntie. Okay. She says, what did she say? If the EFF take over, this country will 100% collapse and the rand will collapse. That's what she said, right? Now, first of all, we just had the situation of rand manipulation, where the rand did collapse because of one individual. One person said, in the event where you do not keep Pravin Gordon there, I will make sure the rand collapses. And he did that. And that is why she was able to laugh about it. Because I was like, you laughing because you know the structures, you know who pulls the strings, you know that it's possible. But South Africa needs change. We need a revolution. And that's why people take it very lightly when we say the 2024 should be our new 1994. Because the ANC government fought for liberation. The new generation needs to fight for equity. We need to fight for equity. And maybe at that moment, the negotiations was, guys, at the moment, our people are suffering. At the moment, our people are dying. So we've got our backs against the wall. So what is the most convenient thing for us to do now? We need to free our people. So let's take what they're offering us. Maybe, right? Because people always say, oh, Mandela was a sellout, A, B, and C. But we don't know what the situation was. But right now, what is the most important thing for us to do? It was freedom. It's liberation, right? Was there a conversation that was held? And I refuse to believe that people like Thabo Mbeki, Chris Hani, Jacob Zuma, Nelson Mandela, after those negotiations, I refuse to believe that those people went back home, sat around the table and said, okay guys, they have offered us freedom. It's fine. They're not giving us the land. It's fine. But we need a plan. I refuse to believe they didn't have that conversation. Because myself, being a solution-based person, driven person, do you want to tell me myself, you, Spoo, we're having a conversation, we're trying to approach a company, there's the 5 of us, right? We approach a company. We're not going to have a strategy on plan A, plan B, plan C. Of course, our country is only 30 years old. Our country is only 30 years old. So to assume that there was not a conversation held on how are we going to get back the equity in this country? And is there a strategy in place that will allow for one, the sunset clause? A lot of people didn't know about the sunset clause. The sunset clause, once it ends, what will happen? And then obviously there was, I'm going to say, this disruption of corruption in the ANC government, right? But there should have been a plan in place. And I definitely think there's a plan in place.
Are you going to do to the ANC what you did to the apartheid government? Or
Me?
what our parents did? Yeah, I'm talking about with your vote.
Yes, I am.
Because Mandela
100%
said that. He
gonna
gave
do
us that permission, right?
Yes, I'm going to do that with my vote. I don't know if you saw, there was an interview that Desmond Tutu did a few years ago where he said if the ANC government do not fix their mess right now, the South Africans will do to them what we did to the apartheid
Yeah, I saw that
government.
interview.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Large majority. Watch out. I am warning you. Watch out. Watch out. Please watch out. We were helped by the international community to overcome apartheid. We, people were opposed to injustice and oppression, and people believed that we, South Africans, would automatically be on the side of those who were being oppressed. Mr. Zuma, you and your government don't represent me. You represent your own interests. And I'm warning you, I really am warning you, out of love. I am warning you like I warned the nationalists. I am warning you. One day, we will start praying for the defeat of the ANC government. You are disgraceful. I want to warn you. you are behaving in a way that is totally at variance with the things for which we stood. I am warning you. I am warning you that we will pray as we prayed for the downfall of the apartheid government. We will pray for the downfall of a government that misrepresents us. You have got a huge majority. That's nothing. The nationalists had a huge majority that was increasing. They beat the dust. Watch out, ANC government. Watch out. Watch out. Watch out.
What is the population of the Zulu nation?
It's very big. I think we've got about 14 to 20 million Zulu people in South Africa.
Right. Now, in the last elections, the ANC won with how many votes?
I don't know.
10.
Okay.
So if the ANC won with 10 million votes in the last elections, 10 million votes on nationals, and KZN currently, in terms of their population, have more than that, and those that are eligible to vote is more than 10 million, does that not mean that they can take the nationals?
I don't know. That's why I'm saying it is an interesting dynamic.
Remember, when you look at South Africa in terms of who decides nationals, in terms of provinces, it's Gauteng and KZN.
Yeah,
Those are the two.
And don't rule out the IFP,
And
considering
IFP.
the history of the IFP.
And
as
also
well.
what happened, did you see what their manifesto launch looked like?
No, I didn't.
It was, I was so shocked. I was like, you guys are still that big?
Of course, in KZN.
I know, they're huge.
Yeah.
They're massive. So
That's
I
why
looked
I'm
at
saying
it.
don't rule out the IFP.
Definitely not.
Because
And
you also have a lot of voices that are saying, I'm going back to the IFP.
Yes, but if the IFP decide that they need to, so that's what I'm saying. We need to ensure that the top 5 political, you guys, even if it's 3, the top 3 political parties in this country, or top 5, have to be black political parties. There's no negotiating on that. You cannot tell me that we are okay with saying that those with the loudest voices is the DA. There's times where John Steenhuisen speaks and I'm like, you should not even have a voice. Respectfully, you should not have a voice.
I mean, I would say that there's even times like Njalo. Anyway.
Do you understand? Like, you should not be able to dictate to the masses of the majority in South Africa what you feel is beneficial to them. Even when you look at what Helen Zille said, she said the economy will remove themselves. Who's the economy?
It's them.
Exactly. It's white foreign investors. That's the economy, because majority of South African black people are not even part of the economy that they speak of. So it's them. Do you understand? So when you look at the top 3 political parties, or the top 4, I'm hoping, political parties in South Africa, if they are black, and we need to amend certain bills in this country, we get a 2/3 majority. That's all. The country needs a 2/3 majority in order for us to amend the constitution. The constitution needs to be amended. It's not even, and this is coming from someone that used to think we've got the best constitution in the world. We do not. If we had the best constitution in the world, why have the other countries not adopted it? The US speak about our constitution all the time. They quote our constitution when they are busy writing their thesis about South Africa. Their PhD is about South Africa and our constitution. But none of them have adopted it. Why? Because it benefits them. There's 2 countries in the world, and I remember seeing this. There's only 2 countries in the world whose Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank. The country is privately owned. There's only 2 countries in the world. It's 13.
It's
that's part in the US. It's only us in the US. There's other countries that's 13, but they partly national and then partly privately owned. But fully privately owned Reserve Bank is South Africa and the US. So that bilateral agreements that they speak of that we don't know about, we really need to see those bilateral agreements. We need to see what the conversation was. And that's why when people say, we're not going to vote, because you have to vote. Because these people, when they speak, when they go to the IMF, they're speaking on your behalf. They go to the IMF and they say, we want 500 billion for South Africans. It's you. They speak on our behalf. So when you say I'm not going to vote, do you think my vote is going to count for you? No. You have to vote.
Yo.
And you talking about policy, and you were so much interested in the policies of the ANC, and as you'd understand, the ANC is in alliance with SACP, and I remember Nelson Mandela was quite vocal on issues of land, the policy of land. In fact, I just want us to play an insert on what Nelson Mandela had to say.
The ANC does not believe in socialism. We are a broad national movement which combines various strands of political thought, ranging from the far right to the extreme left, embracing liberal and conservative views. And if you study our basic policy document, the Freedom Charter, you will find that it is based on free enterprise. And the land, for example, there is no nationalization of the land. And the land is subject to individual ownership. And in actual fact, when the Freedom Charter is applied, when the provisions of the Freedom Charter are applied, capitalism amongst Africans will flourish as never before. I wrote an article in 1956 to this effect, to say private enterprise, when a democratic system is introduced, will flourish in this country as never before. And the only exception is a clause which calls for the nationalization of the mines, the financial institutions, and monopolies. That is done because of the conditions in the country. It's a clause which was actually adopted in the constitution of the present ruling National Party in the 40s. So there is nothing unique in that. There is no element of socialism in the policy of the ANC, whatever may happen in the future.
So what do you make of what Mandela had to say regarding the policies of the ANC and its tripartite alliance?
Yeah, I think President, in fact, the correct pronunciation even of his name is Mandela. I know that because Mandela, President is Mandela.
Okay.
Yeah, so President Mandela, he has a clip that, in fact, I've just seen recently. I didn't know about this clip, I must admit. The clip where he talks about the posture of the ANC on issues. That clip, it actually is a perfect portrayal of the ANC as a neoliberal organization. You can hear President Mandela himself, talking highly of capitalism and being categoric about not being a socialist organization, as it were. You can also hear him rubbishing basically the issue of the land as understood by all revolutionaries, and hear him talking more about private ownership of the land, stuff like that. This is when you realize that the South African Communist Party must accept that it has failed to influence the ANC towards their socialism agenda. And I don't understand why they're still in that alliance, because ever since they started with the ANC, they have never really succeeded to influence the ANC towards socialism, as it were. That's why we have this mess that we have now. Yeah, so indeed, if anybody wants to know as to which organization is best placed to take over the fight which our kings and queens in the 1800s, 1700s were fighting against colonialism, it's only the EFF. The EFF has got no, it does not sympathize with imperialism. EFF is very clear about issues around the land. And I think the important thing really about the EFF there is not, EFF is not even saying chase anybody away, no. It just simply says this is a God-given thing to everybody in South Africa. So therefore the state must be the custodian of this, and the utilization must be optimum. Utilization, if you're using it optimally, EFF is not going to bother you. But if you're using the land for just keeping it fallow, you're not using it, you just want to hit your chest that this is my land, then it must be taken and be put to best use for the country. So yeah, I think that clip must show South Africa that the time for the ANC should not even have started. In fact, I would argue that if we had time, I would go through the whole thing just to show you that, in fact, truth be told, the ANC was actually a scam. If you ask me, it was actually a scam, and it has actually delayed the transformation of this country. I mean, if you can look now, I mean, why would we have in the constitution of the country a cutoff in terms of issues around land distribution and restitution, where they put a cutoff date of 19 June 1913? Basically, the ANC has agreed that all the land that were robbed from 1652 until 19 June 1913, we must forget about that land. The only discussion starts from 1913, which were just a few farms here and there. So you can see that this organization's posture is a sellout organization. I mean, why would they in 1994 reverse even something that was progressive done by Verwoerd? You know, Verwoerd, with all his faults, but in 1961, Verwoerd got South Africa to be sovereign state, not to be part of the monarchy and everything. 1994, the ANC's first decision was to take us back into the clutches of the imperialism and join the Commonwealth. As we see it here and now, South Africa is a puppet state. You know, when the EFF in fact talks about our 2024 is our 1994, that statement is very deep and it's very important to really understand, because we would have thought that in 1994 we got political freedom and the EFF is going to bring economic freedom. No, the task for the EFF is bigger. We actually don't have even political freedom. ANC is in the political office. They are not in political power. No. If they had the power, they would have done a lot of things. They've got no power. They are in office. They get instructions from the establishment. They get instructions from somewhere. They're actually not in power. So the challenge for the EFF going forward is not only economic emancipation, it's political emancipation as well, so that political decisions can be taken. So that's really the situation that we find ourselves. So I think South Africa is lucky to have an organization like the EFF.
Because the ANC-led government, surely it's leading people into something else, because they even worship the late Queen Elizabeth. I mean, our president went there to attend. Let me tell you something. And this is not being spoken about and analyzed a lot. The fact that all presidents of this country, no fail, they all have to wear that bath. That thing that they give them where the Queen gives them or the King gives them in England. That thing, they are knighted. They are knights. These presidents of this country are knights of the British Crown. Now, when you are a knight of the British Crown, you have a duty to a principal, as it were. So the reason we're not making progress here is because we are led by knights of the British Crown. So their first allegiance is to their principal. This is why things don't move. Because, I mean, if you look at even our economy is not moving because South Africa has become a place where you just take raw material and take it to the monarchy. I mean, right now, the Queen there is sitting with more gold than we have gold in South Africa, and they've got no gold mines there. And this is the model that we have. Now, if you had an organization like the EFF in charge, one of the things that the EFF has said is that when we take power, we're going to stop those trucks that go to Richards Bay.
we're going to do a roadblock, it's going to stop, and we're going to beneficiate here and then sell them finished goods. That's what must happen. If anything, and it doesn't mean we're not going to have international cooperation, we will. These firms must come here and set up shop here so that we can have employment here. We must not export jobs. We must come, set up shops here, employ our people here, build the economy, build, beneficiate all our products, be it agricultural products, be it minerals and all of those things. They must be beneficiated here. So that's what the EFF government would do.
So these are some of the reasons why you, should I say, ran away?
Yeah.
From the ANC.
No, the reason I left the ANC is because after realization that, okay, there was a mess up in all these years, and then there was a decision taken in 2017 that meant let's do a step change and fix the mess, as it were. This is why there were decisions or progressive resolutions like expropriation of land without compensation, like nationalization of the Reserve Bank, and conversion of Post Bank into a state bank, all of those things. So all of those decisions were taken. Then instead, come 2018, when people start to pronounce on these, then you have people that are appointed in those various roles, like a governor of the Reserve Bank. Tito Mboweni at the time would say, "We're talking nonsense. That's not going to happen," and all of that. And then we have the president of the country backing him up on that. Then I decided, well, what is this now? The last time I checked was that the ANC was the center of power. What the ANC says, it must happen. Now you have the ANC saying one thing, progressive in their conference, but the deployed cadres of the ANC that must make it happen in government do something different. Then I decided that actually the organization has ended. There's no longer the ANC as I had understood it all these years, because there was nothing more sacrosanct in the ANC than the resolutions of the conference. Now, and it's one thing to be delayed in implementing the resolutions, but it's another to speak against the resolutions of the conference. I mean, this current NEC, they even amend some of the resolutions of the conference, and yet, in terms of their own democratic centralism, once the higher structure is decided, NEC is subservient to the conference.
But the conference that can,
the step aside thing, as an example, was twisted by the NEC in between conferences. They have no power to do this. Then you realize that this thing has deteriorated. So that's why I decided that enough for me. Let me move on. And then I joined ATM at the time. And the reason I joined ATM, by the way, more than anything else, is because it was postured as an organization that has got all the churches that had signed up. I understood the TACC to be having 6 million people. I understood the CC to be part of this. I understood Shembe to be part of this. I understood Bantu Church of Christ to be part of this. And I looked at the numbers. I said, okay, get this right.
Yeah.
This is going to be the new government. And when I got in there, other things happened, and I don't know what they said to those other churches. And before we knew, it was not like that and all of that. So otherwise, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the ATM. But I left the ATM as well because I just thought that the critical mass, which I thought they were going to have quickly, they don't have. And the organization that has got the critical mass to make meaningful changes, the EFF. If you look at the number of public reps that the EFF has at all levels of government, whether it's local, whether it's provincial, whether it's national, the EFF has got that critical mass. So if you're looking for a here and now organization, that's the EFF. So that's why I end up with the EFF. But by the way, also, my ideology, or BMF ideology and the EFF are not very different actually. Way back in the 2011, 2012, around that space when I was still president of the BMF, there used to be a lot of convergence with the Malema Youth League of the ANC. Of the time, they would say something, would back it up, would say something that back it. So there's always been that alignment. So when I came to the EFF, it was really a natural place for me. I don't have to be anybody else to be in the EFF. I just got to be me. So when I'm becoming me, I become I think I come seamlessly into the EFF because ideologically there's 100% alignment.
Sure.
Yeah.
And when you joined the EFF, you said you are urging other professionals to follow suit.
Yeah. You see, it's important for professionals to come to the organization like the EFF because what we need in the EFF is to make sure that the brain power that is already in place is augmented so that this thing can move properly. In the EFF, I mean, this whole thing about superior logic and all of that, it means the issues of reading, research, and analysis is key in the EFF. We don't just do emotional decisions. So for that to happen on a consistent level, you need a lot more people that are studious in their approach, that are scholarly in their approach, and this is what professionals do. One of the reasons, by the way, I in the ANC days, I actually started this thing called the Progressive Professionals Forum. Okay. It's because I came to the same realization that actually, because you would go to the ANC conference and all the professionals would be put in a corner there called deployed cadres, and they would sit there and not really participate in the conference. And it would be the guys from branches, not that they're not professionals in the branches, but there'll be guys from branches that run the show. But the people with data and research and everything that are running government institutions, your CEOs of state-owned enterprises, your DGs, they would sit quietly in this one corner. If you're not a member of a branch, you just sit there and watch the conference, and you can see that actually if you had an opportunity, you could do this and all of that. But the space there does not allow you, because when the guys speak there, the first thing they say says, Chair, this is me from this branch, from this region, and in our AGM. So you can see that people pull their muscle. You stand up there as a deployed cadre. It's like you're speaking for a jacket. So people just decided to just keep quiet. So I started the PPF to say professionals must take them out of the idle mode and all of that. So in the EFF, that concept of the PPF is integrated into the entire organization. The EFF is pro-professionals. This is why even in the list process, there's issues about how many graduates, how many PhDs, because the EFF realizes the need for professionals. So the statement I was making is properly aligned with the posture of the EFF towards thought leadership on issues, research on issues, substantive submissions, not just howling.
This system of oppression deeply entrenched racial inequalities, setting the stage for the challenges we face today. As we confront these harsh realities, it's imperative that we unite as a community to demand change. Now, take a moment to watch this clip and reflect. Is it time to heed this advice? Have we reached the moment to reconsider our votes and elect leaders who will be truly accountable? Leaders who will advocate for policies that uplift the marginalized and work towards a more just and equitable society for all South Africans. It's time to confront the unfinished business of our democracy and address the systemic injustices that continue to plague Black South Africans. As I conclude, I call all of us to do the right thing on May 29. And please, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more discussions on pressing social issues. Together, we can build a brighter future for all. Until next time, take care.
But I tried to pretend that I was humble and didn't really mind. It was not true. I was very hurt.
On the May 7th poll, Tutu says the ANC is no longer a party he believes in and will be making his cross elsewhere.
I have already said, that I won't vote for them. That is something that I have said. And I say it with a very strong, very heavy heart.
The Archbishop says South Africans must be proud of their country and must help to do their bit to build it by thinking hard about who they'll vote for in the upcoming elections.